Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello, and thank you for watching.
For the past few weeks, Central Square has played host.
Public property is that we have a tragedy of the commons issue.
Saying happy holidays, King.
Voluntary interactions where individuals are free to act so long as they don't initiate force.
This morning, we gather to remember Sergeant Tom Ball.
Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Johnny Ray.
And I'm Allie Havens. Starting out in local news, the sun has set on the Kingsbury Corporation with the sale of their equipment and patents to Optimation Technology Incorporated.
The sale was greenlit by the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for $3.1 million. The Kingsbury Corporation has been a part of Keene for more than 100 years, and at one point provided jobs for several hundred people. In 1894, Harry Thayer Kingsbury bought the Wilkins Toy Company with the help of his grandfather, Edward Jocelyn, and expanded the line of toys produced while creating new machines with which to make the toys.
In 1918, with the help of his eldest son Edward, Harry changed the name of the company to Kingsbury Manufacturing Company. It was also around this time that the United States government first contacted Kingsbury to produce parts for the military. In 1928, the company divided into two parts, with Edward Kingsbury named president of the Kingsbury Machine Tool Corporation, and a new building was constructed next to the toy company to house this new manufacturer.
After difficult times during the 1930s, including a devastating flood in 1936, which triggered an expansion of the company, and a hurricane and flood in 1938, the machine tool business was called on in 1939 to help in the buildup of the United States military. That side of the Kingsbury Company experienced a boom in sales and rallied to meet the new demand. The war took a different toll on the toy company, as it was shortly closed, and by 1942 the machines in the toy company were all used to help with the production of machinery.
1945 rolled around and Kingsbury was swept up in the post-war automobile business, with a shift in manufacturing to meet this market opportunity. Since then, the company has produced a variety of machines that had to, in turn, produce items such as washing machines, typewriters, power tools, and farm equipment. Following the recent collapse of the auto industry, Kingsbury had suffered heavy financial losses, which led to the decision to close the doors and file for bankruptcy.
The Kingsbury property has yet to be sold, and the money garnered is earmarked to meet the remaining debts. Optimation plans to move the machinery and equipment to its Rochester, New York headquarters. According to Optimation CEO William K. Pollack, a small engineering office will remain in Keene.
On Thursday, the Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee will meet to discuss and allow for public remarks on the acquisition of a Lenco BEARCAT assault truck.
The BEARCAT is manufactured by Lenco, and they put out this video promoting their equipment. Those who tout the need for this vehicle often remark about the safety aspects and the good that it can do for the public. Let's see the video and see what aspects of the vehicle Lenco wants to promote.
The committee meeting is set for 5:30 on Thursday, and Free King TV has learned about a new petition making the rounds that specifically asks the City Council to reject the grant and the vehicle.
If you have an opinion on this subject, you may certainly take a moment and attend the meeting to let your voice be heard.
If you have traveled out and about these past few months, it may be hard to miss all of the campaign signs and talk of GOP presidential candidates. Russia Today has provided an interesting perspective on American politics. Take a look at this video.
Well, the blunders of US politicians have inspired jokes and parodies for decades. With the US presidential election campaign heating up, there's a whole new supply of ammunition. But as RT's Marina Portnaya reports, some believe the comments are displays of ignorance and disregard for world affairs and should be no laughing matter.
Every 4 years, America's top job is up for grabs. With each new election comes a new batch of candidates with compromising foreign policy credentials.
When they ask me who's the president of Becky, Stan, I'm going to say, I don't know. Do you know?
I'm afraid that it's a very hard struggle, particularly given the situation on the Iraq-Pakistan border.
You can actually see Russia from land here in Alaska.
Africa was a country on the brink of complete meltdown and chaos.
Geographically illiterate U.S. candidates have supplied comedians with endless material. But all jokes aside, some presidential hopefuls vying to lead the world's most powerful armed forces know very little about America's military interventions.
So you agreed with President Obama on Libya or not?
Okay, Libya.
Forming a cohesive sentence on geopolitics can be a struggle.
I do not agree with the way he handled it for the following reason. No, that's a different one.
Differentiating between friends and enemies, also a challenge.
Obviously, got to stand with our North Korean allies.
In the case of Republican candidate Mitt Romney, mixing up presidents and prime ministers can be common.
I think President Putin represents a real threat to the stability and peace of the world.
The overarching ignorance on international affairs has caused American political commentator Bill Maher to conclude,
I think anybody could be president in this dumb country. Okay.
Sort of like at this point now, where I think if you're going to be, when you register to be a candidate, you also have to go take a test about foreign affairs. And if you fail the test, we might get you one chance to take it again. And then I'm saying, sorry, go run, for city council in your little town in Alaska.
If a country with the world's highest national GDP is being represented by politicians with a deficit on international affairs, the biggest consequence is likely to be America's credibility around the world.
And even who we target.
And let me finish with this. I get lost in a blizzard of words there.
This is where it gets really dangerous for the United States of America. It's like, wait a minute, how could they possibly be right about terrorism? How could they be right about North Korea? How could they be right about Iran's so-called nuclear program when their candidate doesn't even know that there's a North and South Korea? I think the U.S. is lying. And so then the world has this very paranoid view of the United States because of the candidates not understanding basic facts.
Or understanding basic principles of international law, which unequivocally prohibit torture.
If I were president, I would be willing to use waterboarding. I think it was very effective. It gained information for our country.
The consistent streak of foreign policy blunders made by U.S. presidential hopefuls is quite humorous, but it could also be considered a national tragedy if most candidates campaigning to be leader of the so-called free world simply don't know enough about the world outside of America's borders. Marina Portnaya, RT, New York.
Okay. Wow, that was an interesting video.
Yeah, well,
Our North Korean allies, eh?
Uh-huh. I imagine anyone really can, you get enough video, people are going to make mistakes. So I want to extend the benefit of the doubt to these people, but...
Well, normally I would agree with you, then it's fine to sometimes make blunders and, to accidentally call Africa a country instead of a continent. I can see people doing that, and I wouldn't fault them too much. That said, these benefit of the doubt feelings don't apply to presidential candidates, especially the United States, when we've got so much involvement in so many countries on the world, hundreds of countries. Then I can't justify letting them get away with being ignorant about the rest of the world when we're going to have bases all around in other countries.
Yeah, and not to disparage beauty contest participants, but the American democratic process is essentially a beauty contest, and so a lot of times you get people who look good and don't really think good.
Right. It shouldn't be a beauty contest. It should be about how much you know and how well you understand history and your understanding of economics and foreign affairs and everything like that, but I think it also reflects poorly on the American people, and seeing these candidates who don't understand basic facts polling so well is really discouraging for a lot of people. And some people think that it's evidence that, you know, people are in the United States are stupid, or we don't care about the rest of the world. But I don't think that's true. I think that people just don't hold politicians to the standards that maybe they should.
Well, I'm a little stupid, but
it's okay. You're not running for president of the United States.
That's true. Thank you. Last week, for our War on Drugs episode, we showed you testimony from Cheshire County Department of Corrections Superintendent Richard Van Winkler in favor of the marijuana decriminalization bill before the Criminal Justice Committee of the New Hampshire House of Representatives. In the interest of fairness, we'd also like to show you a video featuring supporters of continuing the prohibition of marijuana.
Typically, supporters of prohibition include police chiefs from around the state and members of Attorney General's office, both of which have a self-interest in seeing the status quo continuing as they profit from the drug war through their respective jobs.
The Franklin Youth Initiative is made up of 5 students and a health teacher from Franklin High School. The teacher and one student had prepared statements to read.
One person.
You said 3 minutes. Yes, we're going to go. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. My name is Shannon Libby. I'm the youth advisor for the Franklin Youth Initiative. I'm also a health teacher at Franklin High School. The Franklin Youth Initiative, FYI, is in working with the Franklin Mayor's Drug Task Force. And I'm going to speak briefly just as a health teacher, having worked in Franklin for 5 years, in opposition to this bill. Decriminalizing marijuana is sending a message that it is quote unquote a safe drug. My experience in working at that high school as both a crisis counselor and a health teacher is that once you decriminalize it, students, kids, teenagers lose that little bit of fear of what's going to happen if I take that next step. We witness regularly issues with teenagers and alcohol also falls under that area from when the kids are 21 until 16, 17, kids as young as 15 that are drinking. And how do you get them help? The reality is sometimes there's just not services in place. Budgets have been cut. Services aren't there to be able to provide what is necessary. And prevention, maintaining this as a misdemeanor, kind of is that first step in preventing kids from taking that step. Brains are growing until the age 21. Puberty officially ends at 21. Teach that in my health class. So their brain is developing. So decriminalizing it, making it a violation versus a misdemeanor, is inviting kids into saying, okay, well, I speed in my car and I get a slap on the wrist. So what's going to happen when we pick up a joint? I also would like to introduce Megan Corning. She's one of my students and our president of Franklin Youth. And she has a statement that she would like to read.
I am a junior at Franklin High School and also president of the Franklin Youth Initiative. And I personally believe that the penalties do fit the nature of the crime. And that's because I know, and I'm sure a lot of you in this room know, that teenagers think that they are invisible. They're invincible. And the fear that keeps them from doing something is not what's going to happen to their bodies. It's punishment from their parents, prison, because teenagers will do anything as long as they can't see the harm. And teenagers can't see what's going on inside their bodies. And I wish all of you could spend a day at Franklin High School and you would know what I mean, because I'm on the bus head to school and I see at least 5 teenagers every morning either smoking cigarettes or whatever it is they're smoking. I see them sneak behind restaurants to buy, to sell, or to use. And the reason that I'm opposed to this bill is because if you've seen the things that I've seen, I don't classify it as a violation. I think it is a crime. I have lost people that are very close to my family because they do stupid things while they're high on marijuana, and they weren't under the influence of any other drug. And because there are drugs like meth and cocaine and heroin, they think that marijuana is okay because it's not as bad in comparison. And that may be true, but it is still very harmful to you. And teenagers don't understand that because they believe that they are invincible. And the damage that's going to do to their body, I know no matter what the law is, the effects of marijuana is still going to be the same. And that's not going to change who uses and who doesn't. It's the fear of what's going to be the punishment of their actions.
Thank you.
Anyone standing up behind you, anyone of the youth wishes to add to the testimony? Okay. Any questions?
They're shy.
that
This
to
is the
follow.
first time for them here.
It's nice to see.
Thank you.
Any questions? Representative Tasker?
Mr. Chairman, this man is the sponsor of the bill.
Okay, who is next on the list? Representative Ginsburg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you feel more comfortable if, first of all, the age at which, below which it's required to send a person to a treatment program were raised to 21?
I'm not comfortable with the decriminalization, whether it's 21 or 18, because the programs for treatment are just not there. I've had many people that are 21 that have since graduated and have come back that may or may not have, had an issue, that have troubles because in a community like Franklin, where a lot is rural, the closest treatment that you can get is in Laconia. And when you're in, a low-income, generational poverty town, transportation is a huge piece. So getting the transportation to go from Franklin to Laconia is difficult. It creates a hardship. I noticed that in this bill, it talks greatly about treatment programs. I think if you're looking at decriminalizing something, you're looking at saying it's just a violation. Speeding's a violation. So I guess whether the age is 18 or 21, that's up for you guys. As a teacher, as a mom, I have 2 teenagers, as the advocate for these guys here, I just think it should stay as a misdemeanor.
Can I follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you teach that using alcohol is more or less dangerous than marijuana?
I teach the use of alcohol and marijuana as equally dangerous. When I present we call it the ATOD section of the health curriculum, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, we teach that the actual facts, the physical effects of what marijuana and alcohol will do to your brain, what it will both do to your body. Because alcohol is legal at age 21, I teach to the kids that you shouldn't drink it because your brain, you shouldn't consume it. Your brain is developing, your body is developing, and studies show it takes full 7 years to become an adult from the time you start puberty. So when I teach, I don't know if I'm answering this correctly, but when I teach it, I teach that both of them are dangerous and that they're both going to affect your brain development, it's going to affect your liver development. I teach it the same way. You're welcome. And we brought some paperwork that talks about the effects of marijuana on the body and on teenagers, so for everyone to look at.
Representative Antos?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question.
You're welcome.
Would you believe that anyone within this committee or on the House floor, no matter what law passes to make something legal or illegal, it will still be used by a person's choice, whether it's legal or not? Do you think that if this was to be decriminalized, that things would change?
I do believe things would change. Because of my experiences as a teacher in Franklin and working with teenagers, I get the big debate, the big question all the time about, well, it should be decriminalized. In fact, that's one of the things that we do in class as a debate. You break up the class and they make an argument. One side is for and one side is against. I do honestly believe that things would change, and I think they would change greatly because the image that marijuana is a misdemeanor versus marijuana is an offense or a violation are 2 drastically different things in a teenager's mind because of the way that they think and that they process. So the ones that are not using right now because it's a misdemeanor and you could go to jail and you could get a big fine, those kids will probably step back a little bit and say, well, it's like getting a speeding ticket and well, that's not as bad, so they're more likely to probably to try it. And I've had conversations with kids where they're like, I will never do it because it's not good for you. And then I've had some that said, well, maybe if it wasn't, illegal, then, I might try it. So I think as you take those steps and you turn it into a violation, that you will see a change.
Most teenagers have a curiosity to at least try something, whether they see it around them or see their parents using it. But from my personal experiences, what's keeping me from trying it is I know the effects it can do on your body, but the main thing for me is fear of punishment from my parents. What would happen to me if I got caught? And I feel like that is the same for the other members in this group. And if the punishment, which is the fear that keeps a lot of people from having that curiosity, if that was lowered, it would greatly change the mindset of many youth.
Representative Penelakis?
Yes, I don't have a question. I would just like to thank the teacher for bringing it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Good job. And I'd like to thank the young ladies who've been very impressive.
Thank you.
And the young man as well.
Or one young man.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good name was Rocky.
Good job.
Actually, I have a question for the young lady. You made a comment that you're fearful of what your parents might say or do. Is that fear greater than the fear of the law? You fear the law more than you fear your parents? I have a follow-up. For the teacher.
Yes.
Now, let's say that one of the children behind you made the choice to partake, and they were caught. Should they have the opportunity to go on to college?
My understanding with the way that the financial aid works is that if you are caught in possession, the drug and alcohol component to that is that it allows for the kids to go through treatment before they are then able to go ahead and process the applications and get financial aid.
And if they had a subsequent incident and were banned from seeking financial assistance to go to college, they would then basically destroy the rest of their life by not being able to seek the education that they were initially trying to find. Is that the case?
According to my understanding of the financial aid regulations, that is what they have in place. I think there are consequences for actions, natural consequences, and if you violate the law, that is the natural consequence as far as financial aid goes. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
You have a question? You have written testimony?
We have some.
May I just add something?
Yes, you have a comment?
A lot of people may think that we are just kids and we don't really know what we're talking about, but this is what we have to grow up in. 2 of us are Tilton police schoolers, and we do what officers do, and it's very hard when we have kids saying, oh, can you hold my pot, can you hold my cigarette? We have to grow up in this environment, all of us, and this soon, 20 years down the road, we're going to be. This is what our generation is. We need to make a living. You can't have marijuana being legal. This is just a step towards it being legal, and it's not going to work. It's just a violation.
The reason that I'm more terrified of the law than my parents is because I know that a couple of years down the road, I'm almost to the point where I'm graduating high school, and I can have the choice whether I speak to my parents again. But the law can determine what I do with the rest of my life.
Representative Anto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do believe that there has been a generation that went through the same process with alcohol.
Is that for any of us to answer? For me? A
Sorry, directly.
It's okay. I know that there was issues with the alcohol. I know that the drinking age for alcohol was 18 and then it was 21. I know back in the 1920s there was the era of prohibition. And having not lived during that time, having experienced, from history, having been a teenager a long time ago, but mainly working with teenagers, I see the issues with alcohol. I see the issues that teenagers and the accessibility for teenagers that get alcohol. And with the change in the CHINS laws, how it's more difficult for the police to be able to get those kids help if they're caught in possession.
She remembers the era of prohibition as if it's in the past, Is this health teacher not realize that there's still prohibition going on of the very substance that she wants to continue the prohibition on?
Well, I guess she just sort of sees the current war on drugs as something wholly separate from prohibition.
Right, and I think it's really sad when you hear someone who is a teacher in a school who has all these students who trust her to give them good information and good facts, who obviously doesn't understand the facts, because she makes the statement that alcohol and pot are equally harmful. Anyone who has tried both of these substances knows that that's not true. And science backs that up 100%. Any scientist who would say that alcohol and pot are equally harmful, they're going to be laughed out of the medical profession. I also thought it was funny that not funny, but really sad that the students there seem to, like the one girl that said that she's more afraid of the law than she is of her own parents. Now, I don't think that you should be afraid of either of those things if you're a good, peaceful person. But does that, like, send off any red flags to anyone that kids are more worried about the law than what their parents think?
Well, definitely. Governments, as they're presently constituted, are like replacements for your family, or replacements for your gods. It's definitely red flags.
It's really sad, and it was a good point that was brought up in the text of the video. Well, if they have these debates in class over whether or not it should be legalized or decriminalized, then why did they evidently only invite the ones that want to continue prohibition to come to this meeting? They didn't bring the other students who have a different opinion?
That was noted by all, and the man who made the video.
Also, what do you think the likelihood of students coming to what they said they were police explorers? These students are police explorers. I don't know what quite that means, but I have a feeling that means they cooperate in some way with the police or act as police or something. What student's gonna say, "Here, hold my pot"? That sounds like an outright lie.
No, not going to happen. Speaking of marijuana decrim, Joan Rivers coming to the Colonial March 15th.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you found the show valuable.
Free King TV is looking for more sponsors to help make this show better. If you're interested, please send an email to tv@freeking.com. We are also interested in your stories. If you feel you have some news or an idea that the community ought to know about, send us an email. I'm Allie Havens.
And I'm Johnny Ray, wishing you and yours only the best.